Thank you for staying with us. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's administration for the past 4 years has been centered around the 6 pillars of development agenda, in which one of it is making Lagos a 21st century economy. In 2021, he established a food pack to enhance food sufficiency in Lagos. And just this year, he commissioned the rice mill in Imota, which will aid efforts at reducing the price of rice in Nigeria. With a vision of boosting agricultural production in Nigeria, supporters from the industry have thrown their weight behind Sanwo-Olu, one of which is an agribusiness coach and consultant, African farmer Mogaji. He joins us in the studio now. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm just musing on the farmer in suit.
That's a packaging in Lagos.
All right, with a population of over 20 million, we have seen efforts here and there by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu to address the matter of food security. From your evaluation, how far have we fared with regards to that?
Yes, when you look at the long-term goals, agriculture is always about long-term planning. And one of the things that we must give to Governor Sanwo-Olu is that long-term planning, which informs the infrastructural projects that he's involved in. One very brilliant thing is the delay of launching the motorized mill, right, to get the right management in place, logistics and everything in place. That delay was a strategic decision which is going to pay off. What that means, one, is that before, based on the old plan, that mill ought to have shut down 1 year, 2 years into the operations. But right now, I can boldly say, based from experience and exposure, that another 10 years, that mill is still running because it's 100% out of government custody, but private sector run. So naturally, it cascades to the bottom of the pyramid. Again, is the food park. You know, when you have projects that are long-term and the seriousness to get things done, it's really working. Along that line also, you know, there's no food without mechanization. You know, there's an initiative around renting tractors with mobile apps and code that Lagos has actually launched, and they are into that because mechanization is a major challenge, and that also is on ground now, and they are partnering with another private sector. Not just, you know, when you see partnerships happen, most government partnerships, it's partnerships with friends and loved ones. This is partnerships with people with minimum 15, 20, 30, 30 years experience in the country. So sustainability is something I see.
It's guaranteed.
It's guaranteed, and sustainability is at the forefront of what, Governor Sanwo-Olu does. So the first 4 years was focused on that infrastructure. In fact, also markets. You have 2 big markets now along Abidjan to Ekpe. Before, there was none. Everybody had to come to Mile 12. And all these are private sector initiatives with government giving that platform. So what has happened now means that if we all take advantage of these platforms that have been created, within the next 18 months after it comes into the second term, we would have food drastically cheaper.
Let's speak to that because, Lagos is a big market.
Yes.
It's a big market for everything. But food, especially, to what extent do you think that project will really alleviate food? There are different levels of food. You have the poultry, you have the feeds, and there are various levels. Can you speak to all of that?
So basically, let me first start to speak to hidden hunger.
Right.
Yeah, hidden hunger is a concept of the food we eat, does it contain the right nutrients? The vegetables we eat, we just say we've eaten vegetables, we've eaten carrots. Does the carrot contain the right quantity of nutrients you think you are consuming? That is something that has improved in Lagos. We have more youths and farmers embracing modern technology, modern seeds that are not GMOs. GMOs are the ones that they've engineered. They're still natural.
Genetically modified.
Yeah, so it gives you a higher yield for your effort. That we have now. So with eating hunger, which is we are eating, but we are not eating the right quality of foods. Quality of food has increased. Again, Mile 12, for some years, Nigeria AgriBusiness Group, led by the late Sani Dangote and currently by Mr. Ijewere, started this conversation around we can reduce post-harvest losses, which is tomatoes coming, by the time it gets here, 50% is lost. But right now, they fully embraced crates in the last 4 years. And so that post-harvest loss has been reduced by over 60%. So people you can buy your tomatoes and it can stay longer on the shelf or in the fridge at home. This is something crucial. Now, beyond that also, we've had a couple of challenges, but we have food distribution getting better. We have market structures getting better. We have more job creations, in the sector. We have more youths being trained such that if you and I or the average investor wants to invest in agriculture now, you have Araga chunking out agri-graduates who can either start or work. So when it comes to like food production, and many people are even leaving Lagos to go to other places where you have more lands. But guess what? This is where the cooking pot is happening. And I must say this, a crucial conversation is the Commissioner of Agriculture also, who happens to have both experience and is a private sector person and also forward thinking. So when it comes to like sweet corn now, sweet corn is more readily available about 4 years ago when we were championing sweet corn. Sweet corn is what they eat, the corn they eat in the developed countries. When we were championing it 4 years ago, there was nobody was, it was less than 1% production. Right now, sweet corn is in almost every major supermarket and neighborhood supermarket. These are improvements that has happened because of a favorable environment. Now, let me talk to the rice mill. When we launched a 1 million bag rice pyramid, okay, if the mill in Imota operates 16 hours a day, that 1 million bags is not sufficient for the operations in the year. That is food security. Meaning, and those equipments are supposed to work for 24 hours, for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So if we're able to produce more paddy of rice, then we already have that food security. And when we're talking about food security, we talk about that rice meal. We talk a lot about rice, the one we eat. We can get into the rice spaghetti, the rice noodles, the rice like semovita rice. We've spoken about rice. And for that meal to be sustainable also, we need to have storage.
I mean the rice dough.
We need to have about 3 years storage of rice. So meaning we should be targeting to produce 3 million bags of rice for sustainability. All this is, hinged around private sector opportunities, job creation, food security, and even livestock to ensure that the youths and our children have the right protein, because rice bran, the back of rice and co, the husk and co, is crucial for the poultry and other livestock value chain. So it's huge what has happened in the last 4 years, the structures, that has happened, and the next 4 years we would, when we use the word, we should have it.
Talk about the poultry aspect.
Now, so the poultry sector has had the biggest challenge in the country. COVID, it started from COVID and a couple of policies that changed along the line. But poultry is still very expensive and challenging. However, poultry is one of the core things that Lagos has strength in producing. And the training in Araga that Lagos government is doing, poultry is a key component of that. In fact, they even set up most of this youth with all the input they will need for like first 2 years to get things going, and it's scaling. But we need to pay more attention to the poultry farmers, which I know that the Commissioner of Agriculture is on top of this in terms of liaising with other producers across Southwest to making feed available. But I know that within the first 18 months, the poultry farmers should have it better. They've been a bit neglected in this conversation, but there's hope right now.
All right. Speak to the matter of availability of land and the fact that Lagos is being developed into a smart city, and we are seeing developments here and there. Earlier, you mentioned something about people train, go out of Lagos, and establish where they get lands, to carry out what they have learned. How are Lagosians going to benefit from all of that they have learned if we are not seeing them, do what they have learned within Lagos? And then those are the concerns, really, talking about availability of lands and the fact that Lagos is developing in such a way that it's becoming a smart city.
So let me analyze it this way.
Yeah.
Because you have a laptop does not mean you don't need a smartphone. Everything you can do on a laptop, you can do on a smartphone.
Right.
But each works different. One is mobile, one is not mobile. You have to, you can work remotely easier with one. So Lagos cannot feed Lagos with all the foods. There's a comparative advantage which Lagos has begun to focus on now. Lagos should be a global vegetable exporter. Lagos and Netherlands have almost the same thing. Do you get? So, and there's
expatiate on that.
So in terms of land size, in terms of water, Lagos and Netherlands have almost the same thing. In fact, Lagos has more usable water than Netherlands.
Okay.
And we have lands across board. And don't forget, Badagry leads to another country, and, you can produce from Ikorodu, you can produce from the likes going through, what's this place again? Benin Republic.
Right.
Idiroko. You can move food across, but the thing we should focus on is the comparative advantage of Lagos, the fish value chain. The lands in Lagos will produce almost all the vegetables we need to consume in Lagos without even embracing all the tech of greenhouses and co. The lands there can produce export quality. Not that can, has been. It just needs to be scaled now with the right infrastructure to support. But Lagos can fit itself with, name the vegetables, especially the exotic. I use the word exotic. Let's leave the low-value crops to other states to produce because they have more land size. Because of the land constraints in Lagos, they need to focus more on premium. The green peppers, the bell peppers, the cauliflower, the lettuce, cabbage, all these can be produced in Lagos, which is premium. The market is in Lagos. But because, take for instance this year now, where planning is crucial, Food and Agric Organization under World Bank has said that 25 million Nigerians will go hungry, and it has increased. Now, when people go hungry, they find themselves their way to Lagos. And so Lagos needs to focus on that core comparative advantage, and it's working. And one other thing that I've seen happening recently, in 2019, we carried out a field research with Honorable Desmond Elliott in Surulere to try to see how we can make food cheaper. So we did it for a week, and the findings from that is what we've worked on for 2 years now to begin to scale food, to making it cheaper in Surulere. And if we do that in Surulere in 2023, 2024, then we can scale it across. So we found politicians paying attention, understanding that food is crucial. When we were doing it in 2019 with Desmond Elliott, everybody said, oh, it's a political, to score some political mark to make. But it was purely private sector led. Platform again, that's what Elliott brought on the table. Platform and Farmers Brothers. So we're gradually getting there. We will not get there overnight, but we need to focus on the comparative advantage that we have.
But the average Lagos resident does not feed on most of these vegetables that you have pointed out. They feed on what other states will be bringing in for Lagos. So how does that make it cheap?
So one of the things that I know that has been in the pipeline for some time now, which you've seen in the last 2 years, of creating 2 markets along that Aja to Ekpe, no big one. So we have minimal 12s, 2 of those happening in that axis. Don't forget, food is cheaper. Yes, the economy has challenges, but it's cheaper compared to when everybody has to come to mile 12 from Epe, to Mile 12 to buy food and take it back. Now they have it closer, so in terms of logistics, it's cheaper. But the truth is, we have to depend on other states to bring in a lot of foods, and we create platform. Let me tell you this. A lot of food is cheaper in Lagos than in Abeokuta, than in...
Really?
Yes. So this is what happens. This is the dynamics that we need to be talking about. When you bring food from Nasarawa and Co., there are some...
The costs
of bringing is huge. Then when you get to Mile 12, it's cheaper because everybody brings to Mile 12. So it's cheaper in Mile 12 than you have in Abeokuta. Because everybody in Abe is more. I farmed across Southwest. I farmed extensively in the North. Yes, in those suburbs in the North, it's cheaper. But when you compare it to Port Harcourt, because we have to compare Port Harcourt, Abuja, Lagos, the cosmopolitan, there are a lot of things cheaper in Lagos. What makes it expensive is the cost of transportation between Mile 12 and where you buy it, which is one of the things that the commissioner has spoken about. That decentralization of market. It's been in the pipeline for some time.
That's why many people go to Mile 12 to go and buy food.
Yes. Yeah, it's the cheapest and K2. But right now, don't forget during COVID, the market was fully decentralized. You had the secondary schools, primary schools, people could buy food there. This is one thing I believe Lagos should focus on, such that more foods will come in. When I used to grow watermelons, I was producing 80 acres, and a particular year, a big retired general in the Middle Belt.
Yes, small retired general. He was bigger. He's a general of generals.
Produce watermelons. They just told him this thing is selling, and he produced about 250 hectares, about 500 acres. And we do small. What we were to sell, a passenger bus that was sold for 120, 240,000, crashed to 25,000 because the general produced. And so we could not sell. So, but what we did was to move it closer to churches and big mosques, and we sold. And we sold double the price we would have sold in Mile 12, but the quality was better. So bottom line is that when you have a lot of products in Mile 12 and there's no space for those trucks to get, they begin to sell cheaper. So there's a lot of food waste. But when we are able to move it, create a system to move it, when food is moving, it becomes cheaper because the farmers are producing and they will keep producing. So logistics is crucial now.
They talk about storage in Lagos.
So with storage, you see, except for the government needs to work on storage for the food security. Like I say this, and I've been saying it for a couple of years, we may have a challenge with food supply from the northern part of the country within maybe 18 months.
Why?
There's always a trend of a map. There's a viral disease, there's a drought, there's something that shows up. And once it shows up, we depend too much on the north, as in the country, not region now, that other regions need to begin to position such that if these things happen, there was a tomato Ebola a few years ago where the whole country didn't have tomatoes. But we need to begin to develop other central, south, and co, so that if there's a challenge in the north, we can come out to support them also with food. That is a conversation that we've not seen. You saw it happen in Europe when it didn't rain for almost 45 days and food could not move across Europe. If it happened to Europe, it's going to happen here. So a lot of trends have been happening globally that has been happening in Nigeria, but it's not making media. Our dams are receding, and during the rainy season, it fills again. But bottom line is, what happened some years ago where the Kara Bridge and water dried up from one side and it was going, it happened in California. Google a Folsom Dam. But we explained it with some science things here. They did something about it. So the events that created a 5-year drought in California has been happening in Nigeria in the last 6-7 years also. So it's just going to happen sometime soon, and that's why the food pack that Lagos is doing is very crucial, because Lagos will feel the heat the most. But Lagos is more of a consumption state.
Yes.
So food needs to come and we need to consume. We only need to consume cheaper. That's crucial. So for everything that is going to waste across the states and the country, push it to Lagos. I have said this many times. United States is one of the leading producers of tomatoes. At the same time, they are one of the largest importers of tomatoes also. They import fresh tomatoes that they blend to eat, and they use the tomatoes they produce to produce paste. So bottom line is that comparative advantage. They would use their corn and soya to take tomatoes from Mexico and co. It's always trade. So Lagos also needs to trade the market platform with other states to ensure that things work.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Okay.
Talking about water.
Quickly, because we have just 3 minutes time to go. What more should we improve on in terms of credit and all of that within the state?
Yes, within the state, it's more of private sector that should do that. Yeah. Government should just. I'm looking forward to a program where you will have the governor to have a conversation with cooperatives in Lagos, the oil and gas cooperatives, the multinational cooperatives, to say pick a value chain and fund it. That will ensure that there's no logistic challenges and co.
I was just musing on this a report recently that said that Nigerians are one of the worst countries in nutrition. I don't know if you saw that. Nigerians don't really get enough nutrition. When we go around with this, our agricultural policies, there's also the other aspect of enlightenment, where people have to know that you don't have to have a bar of 5,000 naira a bar, eat and a mama of 2 naira, and then you feel that you are
6 to 6.
When I was defending my project in school, I read snails, and I knew my professors, they were all going to be, very intense on me. So I said, if you have ever told your children that make sure you finish the eba or the rice before you take the meat, there's poverty in your family.
Yes.
Because the children need more protein than the big thing. Yeah. And so all of them could not talk. They could not criticize me again, and they gave me a pass mark because they didn't want to show that there was poverty. So bottom line is nutrition. Lagos should be talking about nutrition more than just having food
on the table.
And that speaks to the quality of food that comes in, which is the eating hunger. So right now, when you say corn is not corn. There's corn that is high in vitamin A, which is good for your eyes. There's another corn that is good in lysine and tryptophan, that are essential amino acids. There is another corn that is high in protein.
How do we identify all of them? They look the same.
This is specialization now. This is Lagos. It's an urban center where you should be talking about we have 5 types of corn.
Yes.
What do you want? Do you need to increase your vitamin A? This corn is available. Do you need to increase your lysine and tryptophan? So specialization is what I see that these platforms and these parks, because traceability is crucial for the Lagos Park also. So this, in the next 4 years, I believe we will see that happen. And it's not for government. It's just the platform. It's the private sector that should latch on this.
Yeah, when we were growing up, they used to hear people say that, if you give a child egg, you will steal. If you give a child meat, it's poverty that's causing all of it.
It's poverty. And I'm not saying all is rosy. Last 2 years have been challenges, but I can tell you 2023, 2024, if you understand the mapping, election year and post-election year is good.
We need to quickly go on a break. When we return, we'll continue the conversation in the studio. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have our guest in the studio, AgriBusiness Coach and Consultant, African Farmer Mogaji. Behind the scene, I was asking that how do we take advantage of the floods we witness in Nigeria, Lagos State particularly?
Yes, the floods happen to be a challenge. And last year there was flood, which affected food supply.
Yes. And,
the newspaper I have in from Punch, I think 2 days ago, NEMA also says that we would have a more severe flood than last year, meaning it's further going to affect those states that produce. And so what that means is Lagos. Now, so when we say Lagos, many times we just think Lagos is water. Badagry will still can take advantage of this. Ikorodu the farmers in Badagry, Ikorodu, Epe, these major locations can be supported, private sector partnership, to produce most of these crops that is supposed to come from the north. Because we have a lot of upland in Ikorodu, Ekpe, Badagry. So upland farming should be encouraged with the right inputs. And I can tell you, you have 50, 100% yields. And so Lagos can take advantage of that because it will be cheaper to produce, and there would be low supply coming from outside. And these are very crucial things, especially the vegetables, the tomato, tatashero, those are the ones that when it goes high, everybody begins to shout. And unfortunately, it's going to go high.
And part of this idea of making it cheaper, it has to do with also storage.
Yes. So storage, when it comes to like drying, solar drying and other means of energy conserving methods of drying. Yes, in fact, outside the country, sun-dried tomato is big money. So what should waste should actually can be dried and pushed out. So we can dry, but one thing with Lagos is we consume a lot and we consume fresh. Lagos and Nigeria generally, we're not really too open to dry products.
Yes.
The market really wants fresh. The dry should be for people abroad. A major export product that we should be looking at, Lagos looking at, dry okra and co. It's something we should take advantage of. But this year, the farmers in Lagos can smile to the bank if we embrace upland farming, corn production, and co.
They use dry okra in the north.
Oh, yes. We have to leave the conversation here now. Agribusiness coach and consultant, African farmer Mogaji, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me again.